Good afternoon, everybody. Great to see so many of you on this webinar today. My name's Oscar from Policy and Practice, and today we're going to be looking at the question, are you evaluating benefits software? This is a slight departure from what we normally do on these kind of webinars, and this is going to be very much a kind of under the hood, detailed look at our benefits and budgeting calculator. And a really exciting chance to get a good look at that. So first things first, I'm just going to do a quick audio check. On your right hand of your screen, you should be able to see a menu. So what I want you to do is, if you can hear me fine and see the slides, just raise your digital hand. There should be an option to do that. And while you are looking at that right hand panel, it's worth mentioning that that is also where you can submit your questions to, which Pauline will address at the end. And also you can see there are some handouts there for you to download and have a read of either during or after this presentation. So just give you a second there to put those digital hands up. Pauline, how are we looking on that?
Yes, you're looking absolutely fine, Oscar. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Pauline. We'll introduce Pauline properly in a second, but first I just want to run you through the agenda for today. We've done the audio check, so first things ticked off, and then I'll be giving you an introduction to policy and practice more generally. We're going to do a poll so we can understand what your priorities are within your teams and organizations. Then the main event, number 4, the benefits and budgeting calculator walkthrough, where we'll get a good in-depth look at the software, and then finally a Q&A from the questions you've written into that sidebar, which Pauline will pick up. So just to put some names to faces, I'm Oscar Jefferson, that's me there on the left, and we've also got my colleague Pauline.
Hello, guys. I'm not sure if we have lost connection at all or not, but if you can hear me, hi, everybody. I think from here. Okay, guys, I do apologize. It seems that Oscar has lost his connection. I do apologize on his behalf. I am going to try and take over the session this afternoon to take you through the overview of the calculator. So apologies about that. We hadn't actually planned for that, so apologies. As Oscar was making the introductions there, my name is Pauline McGrellis. I work as a business account manager for policy and practice. So I work with a lot of organizations like yourselves, really, in terms of helping to understand your requirements, what your key objectives are in terms of challenges throughout the organization and that as well. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of a background to policy and practice, who we are, what we do initially, just to set the scene. We very much work with organisations and residents to essentially help make the welfare system easier to understand. We have three arms to our business. Essentially, or three arms to the work that we do. The initial, I'm going to work from right to left there. Our software really is at the heart of everything that we do, and that's what we're going to take a look at today. And also we have our analytical work that essentially uses public data to identify the the cumulative impacts of welfare reforms, so that the likes of local organisations, local authorities, other organisations can really, I suppose, disperse their support to the people that need it most. And what we do also do is try to influence policy at local levels, or at national levels. So a lot of the findings of the work that we do and the analysis that we do, we feed it back into national level, into Westminster special advisors, select committees, and that at Westminster, to try and really have an effect, a positive effect on policy change, etc. Yeah. Now, for a lot of you, I suppose the challenges really do really make up keeping up with the welfare system, the changes that are actually afoot, etc. So, with welfare reforms, this is just a little bit of a roadmap to give you a bit of an idea as to the changes that have actually happened, the changes that are ahead as well. So, I guess for a lot of you, the challenges are about actually keeping up with them reforms and making sense of them, and actually engaging your tenants, your clients in conversations where them reforms, trying to make sense of them itself, really. Yeah. This really is just a little bit of background to our evolution of our software that we will take a look at today. I'm not sure if all of you are aware, but the calculator was initially built by our director, Devin Galeni, who, when he worked at the Centre for Social Justice with Ian Duncan Smith, he was the original architect of the Universal Credit system, and he built our Universal Credits calculator to actually help explain the concept of universal credit and what it actually means. So, following the system design, and that he actually put the calculator up on a website, and within 3 months it had 30,000 hits, really. So I think this was just, I suppose, testament to the challenge that we all have in trying to understand the welfare system itself. We have, with engagement with various different clients, actually developed the calculator over time. With London Borough of Lewisham there, we have actually mapped the legacy system into the Universal Credits Benefits and Budgeting calculator to really see what the impact of moving over to Universal Credit from the legacy system is going to be for residents. And as such, we helped London Borough of Lewisham help 3 times as many households back into work itself. So over the time, we, as I say, we have actually developed in line with our customers' needs. And one of the things that we have actually introduced last year was our user group, our calculator user group, where we rely on feedback from organisations like yourselves and all of our customers to help drive the development of the calculator itself, really, in terms of providing you with a system that is something that that you find useful in terms of the needs that you actually have in supporting the people that you work with. Okay, so now what we're going to do is a quick poll. I'm quite interested in learning about your organisation's key priorities. So we have a few different questions on here. So yeah, just keen to learn what your priorities are. First of all, we have the maximising of the income of the people that we help. Then we have number 2 is helping people to sustain their tenancies. Number 3, helping people into employment to increase their financial resilience. And number 4 there, we have driving efficiencies and offering an holistic approach there, sorry. And number 5, reducing reducing arrears and offering budgeting support. So if you guys can maybe give your answers to the questions. I can see that most of you have actually voted. I'll just wait for a few more to actually make their vote itself, but yeah, okay, that is fine. So yes, what we actually see, and if I close the poll, what we're able to see is the results from that. So we have yes, a bit of a mix here. We have 50% maximising the income of the people that we help. We have 50% of people to sustain their tenancies, 25 to help people into employment or increase hours. And we also have 50% reducing arrears and offering budgeting support there. So, so yes, thank you very much, everyone, then for answering the questions there. That gives us a bit of an idea around how we will take you in terms of the calculator itself. So at this point, Oscar was going to jump on and take you through the tour. So as he has lost his connection, oh, you're here, Oscar, are you?
Hi, Pauline. Sorry, yeah, I'm back now. I'm back
Okay.
and raring to go if you want me to jump back
You're
in.
raring to go. Okay, so apologies, guys. What we will do at this point in time is just to hand over to Oscar to take us through the tour of the calculator itself.
Okay, fantastic. Pauline, just to confirm with you there that you can see my screen now.
Yes, you are alive and well, and we can see everything, Oscar, and hear you well. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent, glad to hear it. Again, apologies for the brief technical hiccup there, but I am back, and here is the software in question, our benefit and budgeting calculator. So without further ado, let's have a look. So the first thing I want to draw your attention to is this right-hand panel here, which updates live as you fill out the calculator. Now, this is a case that I've pre-populated earlier, so all of these are green, but this is just a nice way of tracking what you've already filled out. Then you've got these numbers that update live, which is really useful for two reasons. One, because it gives you a soft indicator of the ways in which your inputs have affected the outputs, and also it's great for spotting errors. If you put in an extra zero or something that perhaps a typo, instead of having to pour back through all the inputs once you've entered it, you've got this indicator there that you've made a typo and can quickly correct that, saving time and that valuable advisor's time. You can also fluctuate between weekly and monthly, and that's one of the key tenets of the calculator, is being able to speak to advisees on terms that mean something to them. If they operate on a weekly income, you can have that conversation. If they operate on a monthly income, you can have that conversation with them as well. Really powerfully though, and I think one of the key things to draw out of this sidebar before we go into the inputting functionality is this advice and support function. You click there on information about your case, and this is a tailored bespoke list of action points and alerts that people should be aware of about this particular case. So for this, in this example, this individual is subject to the benefit cap here, and there's some more information on that, and has rent over the local housing allowance as well. So those are key priorities that need to be addressed. Then you've got amber priorities around debt, DHP, universal credit eligibility, and then the blue are more general piece of information as well, such as free prescriptions and how you might be eligible for that. And that's all there for you with descriptions and also handy links. And that's another key thing to bring out about the calculator, is if it's not already held within the calculator, it's just one click away. You can click over and apply and get the support that you need. So moving back over to this right-hand bar, you've also got these action plans. You can add actions of any sort and follow those and address them. Set a deadline and add that so that you have a record of the conversation and the agreement that you and your advisee have. So particularly if you're creating a plan with a tenant, you can see what you've agreed and check those off as you go. which is a great way to kind of underscore the conversations you've had and make sure you're not starting from scratch every time an individual comes in. There are links to Advice Local. I know we've got some advice organizations on this webinar today, so some of you guys will show up on this this feature as well. But it's just a quick way to signpost someone to further advice, further support around a particular topic in a particular area. You've got your Find a Basic Bank Account, another example of the kind of seamless integration with other websites that you've got here. You can just click over there and start them on their path to getting a bank account, which will enable them to claim universal credit. Finally, at the bottom here, you have a live updating list of benefits that this household is eligible for, and you can click on each of those and it will take you to the relevant gov.uk page, and they can start that application to ensure that they're getting the maximum income that they require, helping you sustain those tenancies and indeed reduce arrears as well. The final thing I'll draw out here is this blue chat function gives you a direct chat with some of our experts in Westminster, and they'll be able to support you, be that on the technical side, something that you're unclear on the calculator, or indeed the legislative side as well. So that holistic support is there for you as part of this policy and practice service. But now on to the inputting functionality, and you've got this chap called John Adams, who is a single man, born in 1978, and again, this is fairly the sort of basic information, which again is already feeding into the 4,100 calculations that this piece of software makes about an individual case. You can look at either universal credit or legacy. Obviously, with more and more cases moving over, you might just want to look at universal credit, and the fields that you're presented with will only pertain to UC. But we'll look at both for the purposes of this demonstration, for the purposes of showcasing the comparison. So you've got one dependent child here, born in 2011. Again, the calculator updates with the most recent legislative changes. So you've got the date of birth in here, of course, because of the two-child limit, and that 2017 cutoff date is factored in as part of the multitude of calculations, to give you just one example. And another really powerful thing about the calculator is that you're only answering the questions that are required for your case. So you're always getting the maximum detail and the most accurate output. But for example, in this case, there is no disability or illness in this household, so those questions aren't displayed. But should that be something that you wanted to go into, you can click yes on here, and you see these options accordion out, and you're looking at the kind of relevant information there. Again, if there's a particularly complex case, or there's a new piece of legislation that you might not be sure of, throughout the piece, the calculator kind of signposts that for you. Some question marks give quite a basic piece of information, some give a really detailed breakdown of the legislation, and that kind of support is there for you built into the calculator. But we're just going to turn that off for the purposes of this demonstration. And again, you can go into a huge amount of detail here for students and non-UK nationals as well, and that is updated as the legislation changes as well immediately. On to property details. The local council and thus the council tax rates are automatically calculated based on the postcode you put in, and of course the council tax band. Again, if you're unsure of the council tax band you're in, you can just click here. It will open up a new tab, and it will take you straight to that page so that you can get the relevant information. Similarly, your local housing allowance is automatically calculated for you, and explained in a little bit of detail, and that's just there within the calculator, so you don't have to go anywhere else, speeding up that inputting process, making it a really powerful, efficient but accurate tool. And there's always kind of that functionality to add more complexity. For example, if there are additional charges, what those additional charges might be for. And also you've got the foster carer in there to have a look at whether an individual can have an extra bedroom in their property. You've got the council tax liability, again pre-calculated for you, and then moving on to income and earnings. In this example, John Adams is unemployed, but he's had a conversation with his advisor at the advice organisation he's speaking to, and they've suggested that he returns to 16 hours of employment, and they've created that scenario. And that, again, is one of the really powerful things about the calculator, is it's not just telling you what you're entitled to now, it's telling you what you can get to in the future if you work with organisations such as yourselves to ameliorate your situation. And that's really powerful. What the scenario does is you just click here, it will duplicate that scenario, and then you can edit it as appropriate. But for now, we'll just look at this unemployed scenario. You've got, again, contributory benefits, childcare costs. You've got a use average function. So again, you don't have to go away and research childcare costs. You can send someone away with a meaningful figure for them to kind of have a meaningful conversation around what actually their situation is going to look like going forward. But obviously not applicable in this case. And you can look in great detail at all kinds of other income as well. Sort of go drilling down sick pay, bereavement, widowed parents allowance. There's a huge amount of detail you can go into to make sure you're getting accurate tax and benefits information on here. And equally, tax credits are calculated based on the income and earnings you put in above. So again, there's no need to get out the calculator. It's all held within our piece of software, and you know, there's no need to go anywhere else. So that's kind of the inputting functionality. Let's move on now to the results. And this is where the calculator is really, really powerful and allows you to really engage people. I was speaking to a client who worked with a housing organization, and they said that this particular feature was the one that really attracted them to the benefit and budgeting calculator, because when looking at this kind of results page, someone leant forward and began to engage with them because it was presented in such a clear, concise way. And we'll look at the way in which this kind of results page can get people to lean forward and engage. First of all, you've got a breakdown here of their entitlement under universal credit. You can switch over and look at the current system as well, and see all of the benefits they are entitled to there. And that will give you an ability to both to compare those and have that conversation either around reassuring them about the transition onto universal credit, or indeed to delay that transition if that's what's more appropriate for this individual. But we'll look at universal credit for now. And you can also see that there's an ability to overwrite these values. So let's say that someone is not getting their full eligibility. You can click overwrite these values and compare the scenarios where they're getting less benefit to where they're getting the full benefit that they are eligible for. This is the first really powerful kind of graphic that we have on here, and it's this expert calculation breakdown. So if we click on here, this is how a benefits advisor would calculate benefits entitlement on paper. And that's broken down for you kind of factor by factor. And that's really powerful because you can then have that conversation rather than just saying you're entitled to 1,500 of universal credit. You can say, well, actually, here are the reasons why you're getting this amount. Here's what you can change. And yeah, here's how you can kind of modify this situation and kind of explain rather than just tell what this situation is. So you can see that there. And again, that's printable. You can give that, take that away, and share that with your clients as well. Really powerfully on here as well, as kind of a soft indicator around potentially unsustainable tenancies. you've got here, this is obviously an extremely high example, but you've got 87% of your household income here is going on rent. And we know that a lot of housing organisations have more sophisticated measures, but this is kind of a soft indicator to show you that perhaps you need to look at more budgeting support and go into greater detail on this particular case. And we'll show you how you can go into that greater budgeting detail in a second. But first, and this is the part that made an individual lean forward, is this breakdown. So you've got the breakdown by the current system, child tax credit, housing benefit, and how that maps onto universal credit, and kind of see how those kind of components are being made up. And by how much you'll be better or worse off as well. And then really powerfully as well in terms of that proactivity, that what's next rather than just where am I now, you've got this compare scenarios. So this is the scenario where John is unemployed, and this is a scenario where he starts to earn, and you can see the earnings as well as the benefits are all factored in there. And you can make that comparison. Then you've got costs. We'll show you how we've arrived at these cost figures on the next page. And then you've got your surplus and shortfall as well, looking at those, seeing how the situation changes. So it's really giving you an holistic overall view of not just where they are now, what their kind of eligibility is, but also where they could be if they made changes, adjustments to their situation. And another great way of engaging people is this kind of slider system, which allows you to have a soft conversation with them around these scenarios before committing to a full kind of new scenario. You might be having a conversation and say, well, what if I worked for 21 hours or 27 or full time? And you can just compare those and see that, yes, your universal credit entitlement will go down, but because your net earnings will increase by so much, you will be able to be much better off in this situation and kind of give that reassurance around going back into work, even if it's not necessarily full time, and kind of supporting them through that potentially nerve-wracking process. And further to that end, you've got this ability here to look for work and go to the gov.uk job site and find a job in the local area. And this can all be printed as a PDF as well, which can be attached to emails or indeed printed off and given to individuals as well. So the final feature I want to bring out for you guys today is this budgeting feature, where you can enter your costs, and then that's kind of presented in a graphical way, which we'll go into. Excuse me. You can see home and contents here is a large cost, and that's around furniture rental and TV license, as well as this council tax and rent as well, which is automatically transferred over from the previous tabs. Again, seamless integration, no repetition of work, straightforward, presented there for you. Now, you may have noticed this use average functionality. Now, this is the third decile in the ONS Food and Families data that's been modeled to match the kind of size and makeup of this household. And you can do that throughout the calculator to kind of add in the average if they don't have a full kind of financial statement with them. But equally, if you have the information there, you can input that yourself and give that kind of fully accurate, detailed breakdown. But the average function is there to enable people to get an indicator of expenditure even without necessarily having to fill out a kind of full financial statement. As you can see, it goes into a huge amount of detail. One thing I will pull out, which will be of particular interest, I think, is the ability to record debts. You can look at rent arrears, council tax arrears, which will be of particular interest. I know in the poll, a lot of people were interested in reducing arrears, and you can record and map that into here, see how that affects their financial situation. You've got your utility arrears, personal loans, and all kinds of debt in here that you can record and map that onto their overall situation. So really holistic support here, and then further notes as well if required. Again, though, the really powerful thing about the calculator is it takes all of that information and distills it into a useful, simple graphic, which we'll see here. So this is going to show you a wagon wheel of their expenditure. As you can see, home and contents is huge, and you can have a kind of conversation around reducing those costs if they're making up a huge slice of that pie. And then you've got a surplus and shortfall comparison as well. So you've got income and costs here, and you can see that here the shortfall is quite severe. But again, this will facilitate the conversation around reducing that. And look at this comparison. You can see that home and contents is massively kind of outsizing that universal credit income, and kind of having that conversation and matching those two together. You've then got this comparison with costs in similar households. So, for example, £3 more per month, you probably might not be that concerned about. However, they're spending £60 a month more on gas than they need to be. Health costs, and you can kind of have that conversation with them and say, actually, why is your expenditure on these areas so much more than similar households? Can we possibly reduce that? And further to that, those are annualized, so you can see, okay, it may be £30 a month, but that's actually adding up to a huge amount at the end of the year. And it also flags these prepayment options as well, and suggests that if you can move over onto a debit payment, then you can, and that'll save you some money. Finally, we've got a smart budget, which takes deductions at source, as well as lots of information about kind of universal credit sanctions, benefit repayments, and distills that into a smart budget, which takes your income, breaks that down, then looks at deductions of source, the payments that you need to make, and then the other outgoings that you can kind of manage and adjust. And again, that's printable. You can take that away, and it just facilitates that conversation around what are your priority costs here? How are you going to stop yourself moving into arrears? And how are we going to sustain this tenancy? By looking at kind of the priority payments, the essential costs, and then seeing what you're left with after that, and where kind of the issue lies. Now, John here, situation is a very difficult one, and you can see he's got very little left after his he's got nothing left, in fact, after his priority payments. And so you can look at that, see if they can be reduced, see if he could be on a different tariff, and kind of address that in this section. But equally, if there was a large amount left after these priority payments, you could have that conversation at this stage and say, well, perhaps you're overspending in other areas. And as I say, you can download that as well. The other thing I will pull out before we go back over to some questions is this the fact that you can save this case. So if you click save there, that link you can share within your organization. So if someone approaches a kind of initial tenancy assessment and then gets moved through to tenancy sustainment, that case can be shared, and you can layer on, say, budgeting information later on. You can also export Excel data if you want to have a closer look at the types of client you're dealing with, who's coming through the door. And finally, you can see your internal usage, see who's using the software and for what. So you've got that really powerful management information as well. I hope that was a useful overview of the calculator. Pauline, if it's all right, I will come back to you for some questions, please. Hello, Pauline, can you hear me there?
Sorry, Oscar. Yes, I have unmuted myself there, so apologies about that. Yes, I do have some questions. There's quite a few questions that I'm a little conscious of time, but let's get a couple of them out there to you anyway. The first one comes from Sarah. Sarah's asking, how is this system set up? If you can maybe answer that for her.
Yeah, thanks. So the system's really straightforward to set up, Sarah. In fact, if you wanted to, in theory, we could set it up today. All we need is the details of the individual users who would be using it, so their first and last name and their email address, and then they would just be sent a setup link to get their account sorted, and that is then supplemented with a day's training to get you onboarded, as well as monthly training webinars, which are included in this service and just let you tune in and kind of drill down into some technical features and use cases to support you in that setup process, as well as, of course, that little blue box I was telling you about, and that kind of help and support if you ring us, call us, get in touch with us to embed that in your organization.
That's great. Thank you for that, Oscar. I have got James, who is asking, what is the difference in this calculator and your free version of the calculator on the .gov website?
Great question. Thank you for that. So if you go over to the handout section on that right-hand menu, there is a PDF on there which delineates the huge amount of difference between the free version and the paid version. To bring out just one, the management information would be one that leaps out for me, but there is a huge amount of difference. And if you are unable to access that for whatever reason, if you put that in the survey at the end, we'd be more than happy to send that through to you, because I am conscious of time and there are a lot of differences.
Great, thank you. I have got Simon, sorry, I beg your pardon, Simon asking, how does your licensing work?
Thanks for the question, Simon. So again, very straightforward. It's just per user. So let's say there was a tenancy sustainment team. You had 3 tenancy sustainment officers. They would each have a license for them based on their name and email address for them to use. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, no, great. Thank you, Oscar. And I'll take one more. The question that's been asked, I think it's around about just how the person has phrased it, but yeah, I think what they're talking about is the single system. They talk about using different budgeting spreadsheets and different benefit calculations in different systems. But are you saying that this system is one collective system together, that means that they don't have to launch the Excel spreadsheet to do the benefits, the personal budgeting side? I think that's what they mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, yes, it does. I know that there are a lot of organizations that have do this on Excel, and what this does is it makes it much more shareable, so you're not constantly editing different Excel spreadsheets, and B, user friendly, as I hope I've shown you just now, and C, it's as you say, it's all in one place. So you put in that income, you get that benefits entitlement, and you put in that budget, and you're left with a really rich, detailed picture that's been distilled to a kind of engageable graphic that allows you to really engage with people without reducing the accuracy of what you're saying at all. So the short answer there is yes.
Yeah, and I think certainly just expanding on that, I would agree with that. The beauty of the system itself is really that you have one single central system that contains the information, really pushing down the resources, time to get through a case, assess a case, in terms of where you are and how you're working with the individual itself. And by not having to actually launch all these different or disparate systems to do one part of whether it be the calculation or indeed the budgeting side, means that actually your resources are using less time making the assessment and the I suppose the case management a lot quicker, really. Yeah. So thank you for that, Oscar. I am actually quite conscious of time in terms of getting you all finished up on time. So yeah, we'll bring the questions to an end there, and the ones that we haven't asked answered, we will get back to you in terms of answering them questions for you.
Fantastic, thanks, Pauline. I think the last couple of things from me then, in terms of next steps. When this webinar finishes, you'll be given a survey, which is hugely valuable for us because we're really keen that these events are useful and relevant and give you the information that you need. So further to what Pauline says, we will be following up on the questions you haven't had answers, but if we love your feedback on the kind of core content of this webinar. And that will also give you an opportunity to request a case study, so you can see how other organizations have used this tool, and get a bit more information on that kind of management use as well. Excuse me, request pricing and onboarding, so a bit more information about that, as well as you're going to receive a follow-up email with the recording of this, and some more relevant information, and a link to the full recording as well, and an opportunity to auto-register for our next webinar, which is on the 17th of April at 10:30, and it's Dr. Ben Fell, our very own Dr. Ben Fell, in fact, looking at the impact of early analysis on specific policy reforms, including UC, as you can see down there, and seeing the effect that will have on child vulnerability. And I know that's going to be a fascinating webinar. So the final screen I will leave you with is I'm Oscar Jefferson, that's me at the top there, my colleague Pauline, and you can get in touch with us either on mobile, by email, or if you want to ring the office as well, that 033 number at the bottom there will get you through to one of our colleagues in the office as well. So all that's left for me to say is thank you very much for tuning in. I really appreciate you giving us your time this afternoon, and for me to say goodbye and pass over to Pauline.
That is fine. Yes, guys, thank you very much. It's so good to see so many of you that we have met throughout the conferences of last week. I know you've been given a bit of a smaller tour at the conferences, so great to see the interest there and taking a further look at the calculator. And I hope that you know, we were able to show and demonstrate how the calculator is such a beneficial tool in terms of helping you to support your tenants to greater income maximisation and that. So yeah, thank you once again. Thank you, Oscar. And yes, we look forward to welcoming you on to the next webinar should you choose to register for it. So thank you again and have a great day. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.